That was the best piece of D&D content I have ever seen in my life. Not only that episode, but these 4 episodes, the players and their characters are absolutely next level. I have never seen also an episode where I reflect back on. Just now I stopped myself and thought through each of the 6 characters, and each one of them complete badasses, masterfully played. The players amazing. I just got chills thinking about each of those players, each of those characters, and the stories that they just told. Amazing. Brennan Lee Mulligan, an absolutely masterful performance by a true dungeon master. I've said it for years now that he's my favorite dungeon master, and I truly feel like I am a better dungeon master because of him the most of anything else that I've seen. And whenever I watch these players and dungeon masters do their thing, I try and learn the best I can from it. And that's where these breakdowns come from, to try and transition from the mega emotions to break down what just happened, what we just saw from the player and dungeon master level of how we can take this and inject just a little bit of it into our games. But we all have to do that. The players and dungeon masters. To be able to come together and tell stories is, as we've seen, a beautiful thing. And as you know from your tables, a beautiful thing. But we have some points to break down here in episode 4 and the season finale of Exandria Unlimited Calamity. But before I take a second and calm myself down, I want to know what you guys think down in the comments. This is the finale of Exandria Unlimited Calamity, and I want to know what you guys want to see next. I'm thinking about going over Dimension 20 and doing some of Brennan Lee Mulligan stuff so we can see some more of that and really start to branch out and do more things. I post 2 videos a week here on this channel. My main one comes out Friday, and my second one comes out on Mondays, but I really want to see what that type of thing is. I could do Dungeon Master tips, more breakdowns. I really want to know. I'm going to be heavily looking at the comments of this video. Like it up, share it with people, and see where I go from here. And now I need a minute because I am shaken to my core before I actually break this thing down. So I'm gonna take a time out. All right, here we go. To start things off, I'm taking a big step back and looking at this overall episode to give you a heads up of what's in store. Because man, first of all, it's 6 hours long, so I'm gonna try and make this compact and easy. The big picture is the pacing and symmetry here is next level. Whenever Brennan started off this little 4-shot situation, he brought the characters in one at a time, all bringing them together. And now in a very poetic way, he's doing the same thing where each of them have their own arcs. Each of them have their own things going on, their own families, their own desires, their own story arcs that he's somehow able to weave and match in within these 4-episode time span. The session started off with a massive explosion that I'll get into in a second, but then he goes into each individual detail, each character bopping around the table, does such a good job. Also, as a dungeon master watching, I look for this type of stuff. Whenever you're focusing on one player and that spotlight is moving around to different players, sometimes I'll be like, oh, he hasn't gone to Sam, and then sure enough, he'd go to Sam. So with the spotlight moving around and all the craziness going on, literal craziness going on, he was able to then bring everybody back together, have a moment where they could talk and do some things to settle in before the big final reveal. So dungeon masters, think about that spotlight of where it's going around. Plan this out beforehand. Whenever you know, before this session started, I guarantee you Brennan was thinking about, okay, from the perspective of each character, what do you do? My dungeon master prep, whenever I prep a session, the first thing I do is do a rundown through each of my characters, each of my players' characters. You get the idea. So now getting into the episode, man, oh man, does this start off with a literal bang. The biggest explosion I have ever seen ran off at a table. It was crazy. Just minutes into the episode, and within 1 second of real time in the game, he amputates and blows off a player's arm and kills multiple players. But the badass part of this explosion is he asks everybody, how many magic items do you have? And I want you to make a save for each magic item you have. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. The surge of magic from what was going on. And again, in the overall story, there was a tree of a huge amount of knowledge. They destroy it in some way, and there's an eruption of magic from it. That's the super basics. But whenever you fail a save with this magic item, the magic item on your body explodes, dealing massive damage. And some awesome flavor moments too, depending on what kind of magic item exploded. Think about the players that you have at your table. What magic items do they have? What would happen if it exploded? Now this whole thing brings me to the first 2 clips here on the good dungeon master and evil dungeon master side of things. And keep in mind that this explosion dealt massive fire damage, followed by massive bludgeoning damage, followed by a strength save to get knocked back with their magic items exploding. Wow. And the last big note I want to say before we get into our first example here is dungeon masters, don't be afraid to pull punches, because Brennan came in here like a badass and left him and didn't pull any punches. So these first 2 clips are a yin and yang. If you're going to be a crazy dungeon master and go hard on your players and even kill multiple characters, the cool part here is with multiple character deaths, the bad part of that is the players of those characters can't really do much. Their character's dead, at least temporarily in this case. But to keep them engaged, he asked them, what does it look like when your character goes flying across the room from this massive explosion he just dealt out? He's going around the table with that spotlight, and the players that died don't really have much to do, but he gave them an opportunity to put the spotlight back on them to give them a chance to explain what their body looks like, what their face specifically looks like, hitting in that emotion. Let's check it out.
As you are like falling into states of unconsciousness and being thrown aside, what is the expression that Xerxes sees on the faces of those that fly through midair in this moment? And we'll start with Nidus. What is happening to you?
This character is looking at these characters. Look at this moment. Ah, the tone. Wow.
I think you see an expression of sadness. I think in this moment, Nidus wanted this city to be great, and feels as if he's failed. This is his fault.
I wanted to show that, maybe more so than I originally planned, but do you feel the weight of that? Now, I know this is an excerpt in the middle of a breakdown or whatever, but at the table, let those moments happen. Too many times we're afraid to put our players on the spot, or if they don't say something immediately, we chime in as a dungeon master, well, just tell me, like what is your feel? Sometimes let that moment sit. And I just got chills again. Like he asks, and I said this in another breakdown, I think it was episode 2 or 3, where Brennan puts him on the spot. What does this look like? Like what, creative moment, inspiration, go. Like puts them on the spot, challenges them. And in this moment, he challenges him, and like, what does it look like? Nidus, what is your character? Like, what does it look like? And, he just sits there, and that player thinking. Lou is an amazing player. He stepped up his game for Critical Role. I've seen everything he's done in Dimension 20, but man, and to see him just sit there, it sets the tone for the whole table. All the rest of the players, how serious he's taken it, how invested he is. You feel it, and you have to feel it at the table. And man, that was a great moment. And he struggled with it, and that's a beautiful thing to watch. The first thing out of his mouth was, he's sad, and it doesn't have to be a lot. The player doesn't have to do some sort of existential speech about all the insightful things and putting it together and weaving some. Now, these players are amazing, and they do that. But don't be afraid to ask your player, because it could be something so simple as just, I look sad. And that's all that moment needed. He continues to go around the table and give these dead players moments, their final moments. And that's another important point here. If you are killing a character, even if it's going to come back, or even if they're not going to come back, whatever, it gives them a moment of like their last words. Maybe it's the literal character's last words, but even if it's just the player's last words, being able to say something over the body of, or over the situation of, the death of their character. Sam's changeling character gets to describe his body shifting in across the spectrum of all these different people he's met, and seeing his other players at the table. These absolutely amazing moments would have never happened if Brennan didn't ask them for this little impromptu description. Okay, so that's the good notes of a dungeon master being nice to the players, but now let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum, and man, oh man, my boy Brennan was in here throwing down, because at the end of this whole situation, they are going through this massive explosion, and there's a slow motion situation that happens, and this evil being of great, immense power comes through the portal. Lewis's character Xerxes pulls him through, and his connection to his husband Evandrin, and all this kind of stuff is going on, and man, was it a crazy moment. But then Brennan throws it down as a dungeon master playing a god that they literally brought through this thing. And players sometimes think like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to try, and you don't understand what you're dealing with. And Brennan throws it down, and absolutely, I can't even, here you go.
I'll tell you why I loathe your redemption. To reach a hand down to somebody, they need to be beneath you. And I'm beneath nobody. You wanted to understand me. Then you should have accepted that I was right!
And he pulls the back of your head and rips the skin off of your skull.
No rolls, no checks, just does it. Let's go. Look at the players, look at Travis. Look. Wait.
Skin is sticky.
You do have 3 hit points.
Give me an insight check if you would be so kind.
Do I have a moment to do anything?
You have a moment to do anything.
Then I'm going to cast a spell.
What do you cast?
I'm going to cast Resilient Sphere on myself.
Cool. He counterspells it with a 9th level spell slot and smashes you into the floor and breaks your spine. And he heals you again, and
He just keeps bringing you again. That is the coolest.
Look at the player.
he breaks your spine, heals you, raises you back up, casts time stop again. I just want to remind everybody.
Really quick.
Yeah.
What I get in between the time stops, buddy? Just let a girl know, like.
No, he casts the second time stop in the first time stop.
Okay.
He exceptionally time stop.
Okay.
He exceptionally time stop.
Don't even mess with it. Don't even mess with it.
This man is a god. He's
Brennan,
exceptionally
get a cake.
Yeah.
We're getting incepted right now.
time stop within a time stop.
Can you see the throwdown? He rips the skin off of this, just says he's doing stuff. Absolute displays of power, because you don't ask for a check if there's no chance of them succeeding at it. And this is a god that they pulled through. Crazy, absolutely crazy. The reactions at the table, oh my gosh. Now again, dungeon masters, be careful doing this, because sometimes it could feel not fair, or you're cheating, or you're just showing your power, or just doing too much or something like that. So make sure you understand the context, make sure there's story to it, make sure you're building into, make sure it's telling a story. Ooh, but wow. I gotta say though, it was amazing to watch Brennan just do that. It just 9th level counter spell, time stop, cast time stop within a time stop. Can you do? Shut up. Just nope. Just absolutely done. Respectfully so. Wow. Now we're gonna shift gears a little bit, because there's a really cool moment in this story that happened where some emotions of not death and destruction happened. It was a cool story moment of a father telling a little white lie to his children. There's a moment where Travis's character, Sarah, this eagle humanoid character, is talking to his kids and telling them they need to get to safety. The only thing you really need to know is that the entire campaign, well, 4 episodes, whatever, Sarah has a ring that glows if anyone around him is lying. The mechanics of it technically are that you have to make a save, you have to make a check of some kind, and if you're higher, then it doesn't glow or whatever. And it came up multiple times in this whole thing. But in this final hour here, the way that this item was used was beautiful. Here's a clip of Travis talking to his children.
I'm gonna tell you all about this at some point.
Comforting his son.
I promise. It'll be an incredible story, but right now, I have a surprise for the both of you.
As you say that, you see that Kier looks down, as does Maya. Maya points to your hand and says, "Dad, why is your ring glowing?"
Oh. Why are you like this?
Oh, God. Look at this reaction.
It glows when danger is near.
Oh my God. Guys, at the end of the day, this is just a little magic item that's been shown multiple times, but Brennan takes it and uses it as a plot device or an emotional push device to elevate this whole situation here. He's talking to his kids, and it could just be like, oh, it's be safe. Okay, we'll be safe. Dad, why is your ring glowing? Taking the player's equipment and magic items and having it be fully fleshed out in the story, and it feels all connected, like the world's alive, because the items that they have on them aren't only used in combat. It's actually real, it feels like. This moment really stuck out to me too, because in the past campaign, one of my players' backstories, a little quirk about their characters. Whenever their character lied, their eyes glowed green. Just a little bit. It was subtle enough to where if you just were talking to them and their eyes glue a little, then you wouldn't have even known. But if you know this person and their eyes glow, then you could kind of put it together. And then we had multiple things go on throughout the whole campaign. They had multiple sessions, probably about 6 or so, and it never really came up that much. It was just part of their backstory. We talked about it in session 1 or 2 or something. It came up and then never really happened. But then there was a point where this character had to lie to their mother about something, where they needed to use something and go get this thing, and the whole plan revolved around it. I knew this was going to happen. I purposely put that character's mother in a position where she had something that they needed, and the reason why they needed it was not above board. It was not a good thing. So the mother would have said no, and they had to lie to her. So they thought it would be totally fine, no worries. She goes to the mom and says the thing. I don't even have a roll for it because her eyes glowed green, and her mom would know that. All the players at the table were like, oh my gosh, you're right. And like, there's that sinking feeling of like, oh wow, I just point blank lied to my mom. So think about what items your characters have and try and use it against them in emotional, tormenting type ways, I guess is the tip here. For the next clip, good old Sam Riegel. Oh my gosh, Sam is an amazing player. I might have to do a whole entire videos about each of the 6 players here and the original cast of Critical Role's players. There's a lot of things going on that I could take things and do player videos on. Let me know if you want to see that. I don't know. But anyway, Sam has a whole thing where he is doing this massive deception of broadcasting to the city. His character is this broadcaster type bard character, and he can send out mass messages to the city that there's about to be destroyed. And he does an amazing job of this. He goes through, he has it written down. And throughout the times also, I'd noticed where Sam would like write stuff and he had this whole thing prepared. I guarantee you he worked on some of this before and in between sessions and all that kind of stuff. But the cool part here is Brennan's response to Sam's amazing display. Now, the speech basically that Sam gave, the monologue that Sam gave was awesome. I'm not going to show that whole clip, but he basically goes through the whole thing, goes through each character, little shout outs to each one's going across, and then tells the whole city. He makes a deception check to tell all these corrupted officials to get on and go down with the city, and he finds out the corruption in the city and is telling people to do certain things and lying them to try and get it to happen. Trying to save the good people and deceive the bad people definitely would be a deception check type of thing, right? But man, oh man, Sam's performance and delivery of this thing was so next level. Here's Brennan's response.
In general,
That was incredible.
in general, roles tend to be asked for in moments where chance is required. But occasionally people, without needing to roll a die at all, just give you a nat 20. And so that deception check, as the administration of the city hears that they are being commanded to stay and see this through.
Oh man. I honestly had a self-reflection moment even right here just now. Is I do this at my tables, and I'm giving credit to Brennan on this. I've watched Brennan a lot. I take a lot of notes. I really do. I've said all this before. He's next level. So I want to level up my dungeon mastering. One thing I noticed that I do is I explain meta concepts to hit home in-game concepts. And that's what Brennan does just now. He says, in general, roles. And he talks about like when you ask for roles, why would you talk about it from a meta standpoint? Why? Well, because Sam's delivery was just so crazy. Brennan's not even asking for a role, and he literally assigns him a natural 20. Like, chills again. Just got chills again. That is in my opinion, one of the biggest compliments you can give as a dungeon master, to just assign someone a nat 20. I have huge, massive respects to the natural 20 and the natural 1, but I give massive props and respects to the natural 20. It is sacred in my opinion, and to give that out, I mean, I completely agree in this situation, but that's why it's such a big compliment. Because could you imagine a scenario where you ask for a deception check and he rolls a natural 1 or something stupid, or a 2 or a 3 or something? No, don't ask for those rolls. Let it happen. And now we're getting into the combat, and oh man, the final big stage is set for this combat. It is the final combat of the final episode of Exandria Unlimited Calamity. And what does Brennan do to set the tone of this combat? He, at a meta standpoint, from a meta level, he's saying something at a game mechanics level to hit home an in-game tension. Here's the clip.
18 seconds.
18 seconds.
3 rounds.
All right.
Six,
All right.
six,
3
six.
rounds.
The
3
door
rounds.
explodes.
What?
And I need you all to roll initiative.
Oh my gosh, let's go. One of the craziest, the initiative asks for, got choked up. That's so crazy, is setting the tone for 3 rounds. Roll for initiative. The doors blow off. The hinge. Oh, what's about to happen? And it sets an expectation of the dungeon master of, this isn't just some like, okay, here we go, roll for initiative. Stuff's gonna happen. You have 3 rounds. This all ends in 3 rounds. Like, oh my gosh, can you see? Can you see the goosebumps, people? Oh my gosh. That's so crazy. At least for myself, I understand the stakes. You have 3 rounds to get this spell off and make this thing happen. I'm going to try and kill you before then. Like, oh my God. So basically the doors blow off and this big badass caster comes in the room, super high level spell caster, legendary resistances, legendary actions, and all that kind of stuff. And he has 4 minions, which are these little machines that one of the actual players built that have been corrupted and turned against them. And they are designed to kill mages. And this mechanic that Brennan added into this thing was just like, oh, I've never heard. You know those homebrew thoughts of those monster mechanics or something where you're just like, oh, wow, that's good. After watching through the whole combat, the exact mechanic that I figured out was they deal an additional amount of damage equal to the highest spell slot that you have. So if you have a 6th level spell slot, they deal +6 damage to you. If you have no spells, they don't deal any plus damage. They'll still hit you for whatever they hit you with, but it's not an additional, it's an additional modifier onto the roll. And I was like, that is really cool. And there was another moment where once they hit you, what's your highest level spell slot? Oh, it's 6 or whatever. Do they take the spell slot? I thought that was a really interesting extra little addition there too about, oh, maybe there's a save attached to it and they lose that spell slot. Now that's far more punishing, so maybe not, but I even thought about amping this thing up even more to where you deal twice the amount of damage to the highest level spell slot, or really taking this mechanic instead of a small little plus, like a +6 damage, that's solid. But then again, a regular monster could have +6 damage, so I really think if you doubled it, that would be even more deadly. But either way, just hearing that homebrew just felt good in my brain just listening to it, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be good. Next level combat mechanics inside of a next level combat. So a clip of this combat here is this badass caster villain is using legendary actions. After a player goes, legendary action, firebolt. Next player goes, after their turn, legendary action, firebolt. And then it comes to another player's turn. It's the player that's actually Abria's character who is casting the actual spell at the place, this main target and focus of this villain's who they're trying to stop. And she casts a spell on herself, Tasha's Hideous Guise, and it makes you immune to fire damage. She says it out loud, open at the table. She's immune to fire damage. Great move by Abria, thinking about what's going on and doing something preemptively. Absolutely great. There's fire stuff going on, immunity to fire, sounds great and awesome. But then this thing happens, and I'll just show it to you.
My dude has done literally the same thing on every player's turn, which is hit them with a firebolt.
Yeah.
And it would be the cheesiest shit in the world for me not to do that right now. So you boom, hit yourself with the guys, and a firebolt hits your abjurative wards. Barely even.
Oh, that's a great move. And even from a meta standpoint, you are giving the player props and respect for them respecting your villain. They did something smart and specific based on something you were doing. So you cast the spell, and what a great, awesome description. Instead of like, oh, I cast this thing on myself that may or may not come into play. Well, you make it come into play, giving the player props for that decision they made, making a cool moment instead of something like, I cast a thing, cool. And now it's the, oh, I guess I won't use the legendary because they just, that's like, oh, now you're metagaming as a dungeon master. So it's so cool to see things play out as they would and make really cool moments. Because that moment makes a lot of sense. I could totally see this caster fired off, and as a reaction, or how you could describe it or flavor the description of it, and then she casts it and blocks it and makes it immune to fire. And now for the most tense moment in this whole thing, well, shoot, it's one of the most tense moments. Abria's character Laren is trying to get this magic off. She is so close, just seconds away. And Marisha's character uses force bubble to force wall, columns inside himself to protect her from being able to do it. And then it's the villain caster's turn. He steps up and casts Power Word Kill, going into the bubble. Now, I even thought, like, wait, can Power Word Kill do it? Yeah, it's not a projectile. So I had all these thoughts going through my head. I was like, no, yeah, that checks out. I did wrestle with it for a second, thinking if I felt good about that or not. But I was like, no, it's not a projectile. You see the person and you put the magic on them. Just because there's a force bubble, the magic started from in here. Let me know what y'all think about the Power Word Kill inside of a force bubble moment, but it totally checks out to me. Feels good. So here we go. Power Word Kill on Abria's character. She's going to die. She has less than 100 hit points. It's Power Word Kill. Let's go. Marisha's character tried to stop it with the force bubble. Another counter spell goes off and tries to stop it. And then there's Sarat, the last person standing, the last chance of this whole thing happening. A really cool homebrew moment happens here, or homebrew ruling, I guess, of this really interesting interaction. He has a Mage Slayer feat, which is where whenever you cast a spell, you can take a reaction to attack. So he's standing right next to this caster. He casts Power Word Kill, which lets Sarat be able to attack him. But in reaction to that reaction, he casts Shield. So this villain now casts Shield, which then technically would spark another reaction from Sarat to be able to attack again, but you only get one reaction. Here's the homebrew ruling on this. And before I show you the clip, I want you to reflect on what you would do in this moment. And then I want you to stop and think about the story, the characters, what's going on here. And then I want you to see the moment that happens because of Brennan's ruling. Also, one last thought to set up the clip is when he says Power Word Kill goes off, you can see the feeling at the table. In general, myself, I don't like Power Word Kill. It feels cheap. It just does. It feels cheap. There's no save for it. You die. If you're in range, you die. Now that's terrifying, but myself personally, I just don't like the spell. Just in general. That's myself. Just let me know. I don't know, but what kill me. Get it? But anyway, all these players are trying to do stuff, and this resolves. It takes about 6 minutes of just this little moment right here of different people trying to stop it before. Can we do anything? You can see the players standing up at the table, leaning over. Like, there's what can we do? And it all comes down to this last moment, and that's also probably why Brennan, as a dungeon master, is being more lenient with these types of moments, because power word kill does feel really bad. And if you're going to do something like that as a dungeon master, you have to have the wherewithal to understand, like, all right, this kind of feels a little cheesy. I'm probably going to let the rules slide a little bit. At least that's where my head would be. We're like, all right, what are we trying to do here? All right, I'm probably going to make this ruling. So here's a really cool ruling that Brennan comes up with here. Here we go.
If in reaction to your, you rolled a 17 on your attack roll, right?
I did.
17 is his armor class without shield. So he would have to cast shield to avoid it. But doing so would trigger your reaction that you are using. It's a complicated scenario.
Reaction, yeah.
So, Travis, the way we're going to resolve this is this. Because he's going to throw his shield up so he doesn't get hit.
But I only have one reaction, so I couldn't do it twice.
But it's an interesting thing. I'm going to leave this to one last roll of the dice. He's got an armor class of 22 with that shield going up, but I'm going to allow you, because you're reacting to him casting a spell, to react anew to that casting of shield. No advantage, no disadvantage. You've got one chance to hit an armor class of 22.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Now, quick time out here. I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is the big moment. I guarantee the feeling or the bad taste in someone's mouth that they could have if they also don't like power word kill or whatever, without this moment, it's like, no, sorry, you don't have a reaction, and the whole technically rules is rules, reaction, so sorry, nope. If you shut that down and don't let them have one more roll for it, there's going to be a worse taste in your mouth. Some players might be like, yeah, no, that checks out, rules is written. But in general, this is the Dungeon Master's final chance. But all right, you got to hit this. Call it a bonus check, a pity check, whatever you want to call it. I call it a story check that makes sense in this moment based on the tomfoolery and interesting situation. What's the story saying? That's what I said at the beginning of this whole thing. Think about what's going on. Think about the story. Can Saret do this? Can Saret, after everything has been exhausted, can he stop him? Let's see.
Box out.
Natural 20!
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at everyone. Look at that.
Yes! Oh, God, yes! Yes, God! Oh, God, yes! God, yes, yes! What?
Roll double damage if you'd be so kind.
Now what happens is a really cool moment. Brennan's done this before on Dimension 20. If you haven't seen Brennan before in this capacity, check out Dimension 20. It's a YouTube channel. They have so many series. Literally check them all out. This is not sponsored in any way. It's just a literal great tip for you. What happens is he writes down the health of the boss. So again, all above board, writes down the health of the boss, puts on a piece of paper. Saret rolls for damage, says the damage, Brennan shows the piece of paper. Saret did like 60 damage, his health left was like 40, done. And he actually stopped him. Amazing moment for Saret, who's basically, I feel like, is Saret the MVP of this whole little thing? I feel like he is, based on this next clip here and the big, huge finale moment of everything's done, everything's fallen, the city's exploding, everything's about to go. It literally was like Star Wars Rogue One, where at the end, they accomplished their goal, but everyone dies in the process, going up in flames. But it was such a beautiful moment there, and it's a beautiful moment here. And there's one final roll. And the coolest part, I think, about this one final roll was he asked him, and Brennan kind of poked it before. I'm not going to show this part of the clip, but Brennan asked, everyone had basically said their goodbyes to all of their different things. He went again in a poetic way around the table, one-on-one, letting them have their final send-off moments of these, all characters are about to die. He asked Saret one final thing: are you going to keep your word to your children? Almost like poking him to, like, you said you'd try and get out of there. Are you gonna? And Saret's like, yeah, I might as well try. I'll look. And at this point, as a dungeon master, yeah, this is here. Yeah, let's make this happen. And you become a yes DM to try and see if this whole thing can happen. And then you get to this final moment where, all right, this is going to be the situation.
This will be our final roll of this campaign.
You have
that. Oh, saying that.
A D10.
Meta.
D10.
Next level.
And mechanically that's giving advantage, correct?
I do.
Setting the stage now.
You have a die of Bardic Inspiration. You have advantage. This is the Calamity. DC we are setting
Don't pull punches, Brennan.
is 30.
Hell yeah. So now the stage is set for this final moment. Can Sarah get out to go return to his family, to go keep his word to his children, to go see his... Oh man, chills again. And either way, I stop myself here and I think of it now, thought of it then, is what happens either way. Either way, the story ends beautifully. The story ends on a poetic, dark note of Sarah trying to get out and burning up alive and dying in the process, really hammering home just the true vibe of the Calamity and what happened and what this thing means. Amazing ending. I just got chills thinking about it. And then, what actually happens, I'll show you.
And you have a die of inspiration. Let's roll the inspiration first.
Inspiration first.
See what you're adding.
Come on. That's cocked. 8.
Okay. You're rolling with advantage, and if you fail, you get a D4.
Quick timeout. I love having the inspiration roll be first, so you really set the tone of what the plus is, and it all comes down to the final D20 roll. Really sets the stage.
What am I rolling?
Investigation, which is plus now with that inspiration plus 21.
Come on, Justice. You got this.
It's a plus what?
Plus 21.
That's a 31.
Now we get a cinematic of him sprinting through hallways, flying, bobbing, weaving, and soaring out into the skies, returning back to his family over the course of a long time. And it's still a dark, dreary tone, but the whole thing, what a great role to end on. You could say it was a very critical role. I wanted to do the send-off for this in a little different way. This is the season finale. I'm just going to show a clip of my true reaction to the ending of this thing. I think it was beautiful. It was well done. It was emotional. Here is just the ending of this to rewatch again if you've already seen it. If not, see what the weight of this is, of how to end a campaign. It's a very difficult skill. A scary thing as a dungeon master. How do I end a campaign? How do I set the tone for it? What do I say at the end? And also a beautiful thing for Brennan stepping into the dungeon master's seat of Critical Role, the literal top of the mountain for dungeon masters. And a great, genuine moment from him that I felt in my heart too. So on a very somber note, thank you for watching. I love this series. I will continue to do more. Let me know what you like, and let's end on this.
Why do we tell stories? To try to make sense of a world that can be terrifying and enormous. In Exandria, I don't know that your story will long be known. I don't know who will remain to tell it, but it did happen, and it did matter. And though Calamity is here because of you, it will not be here forever. Thanks so much for watching. For all of you at home, we're sending lots of love, and it has been an honor beyond words to be at this table and tell this story with you all. Tons of love from all of us to all of you, and we hope that you have seen the story here and share in all of the feelings that we have. And I guess at the end, all I have left to say is it Thursday yet?
Masterful.
Masterful is right. Oh my God. Wow.